Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. On the show tonight,
if the rationale of the decision as released were to be sustained, a whole range of rights are in question.
A bombshell leak of a Supreme Court draft opinion hints at a potential overturning of abortion rights. We hear from court watchers and advocates.
We saw the warnings.
Plus, state lawmakers on what the end of Roe v. Wade would mean in Illinois.
This is not going well for Vladimir Putin at all.
Local members of Congress weigh in on aid to Ukraine amid the ongoing war and abortion access.
Aurora mayor and gubernatorial candidate Richard Irvin backed an effort that gives him sway over which local candidates appear on the ballot.
This is the city that has what it takes. No shortcut.
Chicago unveils its bid to host the 2024 Democratic National Convention. A look to the future and the past when it comes to the city playing host.
Applications are open for the city's cash assistance pilot program, giving eligible applicants $500 a month for 1 year. And memorabilia from The Matrix is being auctioned off. We speak with one of the creators of the films. But first, some of today's top stories. A new lawsuit alleges shocking neglect at an assisted living facility for seniors on the South Side. The lawsuit is being filed on behalf of the families of 2 seniors who are staying at New City Supportive Living in the Back of the Yards neighborhood. A lawyer representing the 2 families says one resident, Jean Smith, was hospitalized 3 times in 1 month for preventable injuries.
Her family went to remove her from the facility and found that she was living in a filthy, dirty, bug-infested room where the trash had not been removed. I also represent Rebecca Spencer, who was allowed to go missing at New City Supportive Living Facility 2 times in 1 week, 1 time overnight and outside in the elements in Chicago. She was discovered in both instances as missing by her family and not the facility. She was found by her family at a bus stop in Chicago soaked in urine.
A spokesman for New City Supportive Living says the company could not comment because they have not yet received any documents detailing the allegations in the lawsuit. The attorney for the family says New City receives tax-free bonds and state funds to operate. Chicago unveils its pitch to host the 2024 Democratic National Convention. A slickly produced video narrated by superstar, rapper, and performer, the Chicago native Common, showcases Chicago as the heartland of democracy and the best place to launch the party's pitch to voters. Chicago is one of at least 7 cities bidding to host the convention. And we'll have much more on this story later in the show. A new campaign is underway to highlight the city's water quality in honor of National Drinking Water Week. Chicago officials launched the new Chicago branding campaign, which asked area artists to create label art depicting how living near Lake Michigan has impacted their lives. A limited run of cans of water featuring 6 different designs will be distributed for free at various events during the summer.
This campaign helps make one of our city's greatest resources more tangible and more thought-provoking. While our water supply is vast, we must continue to be incredible stewards of our earth and our water.
And up next, local reaction to the leaked Supreme Court draft opinion on Roe versus Wade, so please stay with us.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
And the U.S. Supreme Court could be preparing to reverse Roe versus Wade, the decision in place since the early 70s that has protected abortion rights. Chief Justice John Roberts today confirmed that a draft of a majority opinion had leaked to Politico and that it is genuine. With more on what it would mean for Illinois, here's Amanda Vinicky. Amanda.
Yeah, Brandis, that draft opinion calls Roe egregiously wrong and returns the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives, so to Congress and to the states. Abortion rights activists and Democrats in Illinois say that they had anticipated something like this and passed measures in preparation.
We saw the warnings. Here in Illinois, we've done a lot of the work.
No matter what atrocious opinion the Supreme Court officially rolls out this summer in regards to Roe v. Wade, abortion is safe and legal in Illinois.
Among the measures that Pritzker says Illinois had the foresight to pass was one he penned into law early in his term. While 13 states have trigger laws that would automatically ban abortions if Roe is overturned, Illinois law does the opposite. 2019's Reproductive Health Act enshrines in state law individuals' rights to make decisions about their reproductive health, including access and taking birth control and abortions. About 6 months ago, Pritzker repealed a law that had required minors' parents be notified before they could have an abortion.
Illinois continues to show the nation what it looks like to empower women so we can be parents on our own time if and when we choose to do so. Together, we put over-the-counter birth control at our pharmacies. We put pads and tampons at all our community colleges and universities. We put privacy protections in place for our most vulnerable young people dealing with some of the hardest decisions of their lives.
Now, reinstating the parental notification requirement that you just heard Representative Harper there reference is among the actions that State Representative Adam Nyberg, who represents a rural area in southeastern Illinois, wants taken. Nyberg says the anticipated Supreme Court ruling is a call to action for those who are anti-abortion. He says ideally he would want Illinois to repeal that Reproductive Health Act and to even ban abortions outright.
In Illinois, it would be a very difficult process. And that is something that folks here throughout the state need to understand, that until the legislature is solidly Republican, that until the governor's office is solidly Republican, that these pro-choice measures will stay in place. And I do believe that through time, we'll be able to chip away at the radical abortion legislation that has been passed in the last 2 years. And I think people throughout the state of Illinois understand and agree with that.
He says that it's not going to happen overnight, but he says he's in it for the long haul. Right now, you have measures that would restrict abortions stalling in Illinois, including one that he is sponsor of that would require ultrasounds to be offered to anyone seeking an abortion 8 weeks into pregnancy or beyond.
Well, there is statistical analysis out there that says 80% of women that are shown their child, shown the ultrasound, decide to choose life because they see that child developing, and they understand that it is a human being, that child needs to be given the opportunity for life. So once they have that opportunity to see the ultrasound, it can change hearts and minds when it comes to whether or not they decide to go through the abortion, or whether or not they decide to have the child.
Meanwhile, though, Democrats say that there is more that Illinois can and should be doing to help to protect and to increase access to abortions.
So our responsibility, and I challenge each and every one of you to get as creative as we can, is to think about what else our force field needs. What else do the women and pregnant people coming from other states that restrict abortion need when they come to us? We've got a bill sitting in the Senate to protect healthcare workers from adverse actions from other states. Are we going to look to ways to ensure that the parents in Alabama or Texas who want to access gender-affirming care for their trans kid know that they're welcome here?
As other states have blocked access to abortions, Illinois has seen an increase in people coming here to have that procedure. Now, Democrats say that the next step is ensuring that Illinois will be a haven and to help those individuals.
We have the responsibility locally to coordinate life-saving mutual aid that includes abortion funds, transportation, and enacts radical hospitality for anyone living and traveling to Illinois who needs access to a safe abortion. Because when the Supreme Court has failed reproductive justice, Illinois has not and will not.
Look for both sides to make this a major issue in this year's elections. The decision, the issue of abortion could have a major impact on races, particularly on any Republican primaries. With that, sending it back to you, Brandis.
Amanda, thank you. And of course, as we've been hearing, that leaked draft opinion from the Supreme Court has the nation on edge, waiting to see if the High Court will overturn the landmark abortion rights case Roe v. Wade. The 1973 ruling recognizes a woman's right to an abortion as a constitutional right. But in his draft opinion, Justice Samuel Alito calls for an outright overturning of that previous decision. Reaction across the country has been swift and heated. Here's what Illinois' senior Senator Dick Durbin had to say.
If it is accurate and it turns out to be authentic, it is a stunning reversal in American history that the court would take away a constitutional right after 50 years.
And joining us to discuss this highly controversial topic are Amory Clefetta, Women's and Reproductive Rights Project Director for the ACLU, Carolyn Shapiro, Professor of Law and founder and co-director of the Institute on the Supreme Court of the United States at Chicago-Kent College of Law, Amy Gerke, Executive Director for Illinois Right to Life, and Peter Breen, Vice President and Senior Counsel for the Thomas More Society. Welcome all of you to Chicago tonight, and thanks for joining us. First, I want to get some reaction to this leak because it is unprecedented for two reasons. Carolyn, let's start with you briefly, please.
So this has never happened before, certainly in modern times, that an entire draft opinion has leaked. We occasionally have had leaks related to the outcome of a case or deliberations about a case, but never before an entire draft opinion.
Peter, your thoughts?
Absolutely. This is it's a betrayal of trust that they have to be. Look, the justices, Republican, Democrat appointed, it doesn't matter. They've got to be able to work together in some measure of confidence. And as Carolyn said, you've never seen a whole opinion. You get little bits and pieces, and usually after the fact, you might get a tell-all book 10 years later, but never like this. Real attack on the court, and it's a crime, as I understand it, under federal law as well.
And Amory, what do you think?
I agree that the leak is unprecedented, and I know we all have a lot of questions and curiosity about it, but I don't think that we should let that take away from what is the really important issue here, which is that the Supreme Court appears poised to take away constitutional rights that half this country has had for 50 years.
And Amy Gerke.
It was absolutely egregious, and as others have said, it's a complete betrayal of trust and really sets a dangerous precedent of how things will work with the court in the future.
Carolyn, how telling is a draft decision about a ruling and how that ruling will ultimately go later on when it's released?
Well, we can't know for sure. We can't know for sure whether the ultimate decision will be revised to some extent from the draft that we have all read today and last night. We can't know for sure if it will even in the end have 5 votes to make a majority. But it seems highly unlikely to me that this draft was written without the expectation of 5 votes, by which I mean, I think at conference, there were 5 justices who said they were willing to overrule Roe versus Wade outright, which it's important to note is not a necessary outcome, even if the court wants to uphold the law that's at issue in this case, which is a law from Mississippi that outlaws abortion starting at 15 weeks of pregnancy. Other leaks are that Chief Justice Roberts would prefer to just uphold that law, but not reach this big question of overruling Roe versus Wade. But I have to say, I am not at all surprised that this appears to be where the Supreme Court is headed. This has been the project of decades of effort on the part of the conservative legal movement. And the justices who are the likely 5 have long since signaled their opposition to Roe, regardless of what they may have said at their confirmation hearings.
Peter Breen, what is the legal argument that Justice Samuel Alito makes in this, again, in a draft? This is not a done deal yet.
And it does, based off of the oral argument, pretty much everybody who listened to that oral argument said, boy, it sounds like 5, maybe 6, to certainly uphold the Mississippi law, possibly to overrule Roe v. Wade. The way, the opinion has been confirmed as, it is a true draft opinion coming from Justice Alito, appears to have the support of 5 justices. He really does, he puts in there everything you would expect him to. to Carolyn's point, Justice Roberts wants to do he kind of wanted to do uphold Mississippi's law but not overturn Roe. And Justice Alito, early on in the opinion, says, well, Solicitor General and the more abortion side said, hey, there's no middle ground. You either get all or nothing. And so that, that's.
And then the Mississippi Attorney General also asked to have Roe overruled.
Right. And but I mean, so that's if I'm drafting that opinion, I'm Justice Alito. I'm going to put that in there. He also put in things, clearly stating that they're not looking to overturn gay marriage. They're not looking to overturn anything else. It's very, they said very specifically the abortion right is different because this is, involves another human life. And so all of that, you look at all the parts of the pieces of the opinion, it reads like kind of the standard thing you would expect to overturn Roe v. Wade, where if you're on my side of the thing, that's what you'd put in there. You'd show why stare decisis shouldn't apply here. And so that was a pretty, it looks like how it should look if you're looking at overturning Roe.
Anne-Marie, if that should happen, how might that affect, communities who may already lack access to certain medical services, particularly marginalized communities, low income, women of color, LGBTQ?
To be very clear, that is what is so upsetting about this. We already know that there are 26 states across the country that are poised to ban abortion if Roe is overturned. And the burden of those abortion bans in those states is going to be felt the hardest by people who already face systemic barriers to accessing health care. They are Black women who already live in places where maternal mortality rates are terrible. There are people who are already struggling to make ends meet. There are people who are vulnerable for a whole host of reasons. And those are the people who are going to feel this the most when states start banning abortion en masse after a decision adopts.
And can I just jump in and say, I really think that there's a lot of language in this opinion that does indicate that issues like gay marriage, rights like gay marriage, the right to have private consensual sex with another adult are entirely vulnerable. What the opinion says is that the only unenumerated rights that the court will respect are those that are, quote, deeply rooted in history and tradition, which the court then the draft then goes on to define in a very, very narrow way. And actually lists as examples of cases that do not live up to that standard. Obergefell, which granted the marriage equality, and even Loving versus Virginia, which overruled bans on interracial marriage.
Which made interracial marriage legal. Yeah, I want to keep it going, and thank you for jumping in, Carolyn. Peter, there has been talk
that... I'm sorry, but the idea that Justice Clarence Thomas, who is a Black man married to a white woman, would vote for something that would undermine interracial marriage is outrageous. And in the fact, there's a 2-page long footnote, back of the opinion, you got to keep reading all the way through it, where they specifically cite Obergefell, so that's the gay marriage decision, as support for doing this. So, and very clearly throughout the opinion, you can see where Justice Alito put in there, and I understand what he's doing. He's saying, look, you can't apply this to any of these other cases. He ends with it at the end of the opinion very clearly to carve that out, because Justices Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and Barrett, we don't know where they stand on those other issues, and he didn't want to get into that fight right now.
And Peter, I want to get Amy in here as well. So Mayor Lori Lightfoot, she spoke about this today as well, and here she is.
It is despairing moment, depressing moment, I will say, but unfortunately not a surprising moment. Too many things in our country have become highly politicized, and now we know with absolute certainty that the U.S. Supreme Court is one of those entities.
Amy Gerke, what would abortion access look like if Roe is overturned?
Well, unfortunately in Illinois, nothing really would change. Our laws here, the Reproductive Health Act, the repeal of parental notice of abortion, are so far out of the mainstream and completely protect abortion. And the abortion industry has actually been preparing for this, building large clinics on our borders with Wisconsin, Indiana, and Missouri to bring women to our state to have abortions. And it's really tragic, but because of our laws, the repeal of parental notice of abortion, young girls can come here and their parents won't even know that they're having an abortion, allowing sexual predators to cover their crimes with abortion, which we know happens. And the Reproductive Health Act has actually made abortion very dangerous for women in our state. It removed abortion clinics under the umbrella of ambulatory surgical centers, so they basically regulate themselves. Coroners are no longer required to investigate women's deaths at abortion clinics. So yes, our abortion numbers will increase, but it's very tragic for the women, not only here in Illinois, but in our neighboring states and beyond, because it is so very dangerous here.
Okay.
You know, I think there's so much to respond to in that statement, but I'll just say this, that among other things that the logic of this opinion leads to is that certain forms of birth control can and undoubtedly will be outlawed in certain states, things like IUDs, some forms of the pill that prevent implantation of an embryo, and even assisted types of reproductive health care like IVF, which leads to the creation of embryos that then are not implanted, may be outlawed, and that there's nothing in the logic of this opinion that would say that that is problematic.
Okay, so obviously a lot to dissect. We are out of time. My thanks to our guests for joining us: Carolyn Shapiro, Anne-Marie Cliffetta, Amy Gerke, and Peter Breen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now to Paris for some reaction with local members of Congress. Paris.
Brandis, the implications of this draft decision are mammoth because if the vote to overturn Roe v. Wade stands, it pushes the question of abortion back into the political process. As we mentioned earlier, Illinois law would protect abortion rights. But how will lawmakers tackle this thorniest of political issues at the federal level? And what does it mean for the upcoming midterms? Joining us now with more are Congressman Danny Davis, a Democrat from the Austin neighborhood, and Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, a Democrat from Evanston. We invited all Illinois Republican Congress members, but none accepted our invite for this evening. We do appreciate you being here. Congresswoman Schakowsky, to summarize this draft opinion, it says that Roe was wrongly decided in 1973, that there is no constitutional right to abortion, and that it's a question that should be left up to the political process. Your reaction?
Well, the vast majority of Americans, over 70%, and that's pretty much all the Democrats and 75% of independents, and the majority of Republicans do not want to see Roe v. Wade, do not want to see Roe v. Wade overturned. What the Supreme Court is doing is going against the will of the people. We have had Roe v. Wade for over half a century almost, and it has meant that women, you know, I wear a pin that says Roe v. Wade was not the beginning of women having abortions. It was the end of women dying from abortions. And that's exactly what's going to happen if they have their way. Women will die. Besides that, they'll take away our rights, our fundamental, our threshold right of being able to control our own bodies and make our own decision and plan our lives. And they want to put women back into, I don't know, back alleys to have abortions and to treat us as second-class citizens.
Certainly
I agree with the governor who says, J.B. Pritzker said, hell no, we trust women in Illinois.
Certainly lots of consequences here. Congressman Davis, where are congressional efforts then to codify the right to an abortion? As I understand it, passed the House and it's in the Senate right now.
Well, we're going to be pushing hard to convince the Senate that they need to follow suit. The American people, many of us feel that we've been sucker punched by the Supreme Court, by our Supreme Court making a decision or getting ready to make a decision that we have not lived with for a long time. And I agree with Governor Pritzker, we don't want to go backwards. We want to go forward. We want women to have every right and every choice to determine their health needs and their health care. That is a God-given right, and no one should take it away.
Congresswoman Schakowsky, is there anything in this draft opinion that leads you to believe that there might be future challenges to states like Illinois that do permit abortion, and that those challenges with a conservative Supreme Court could be successful?
I don't think there's any question that they want to have it as a national prohibition on abortion, not just among states. But you know, they've even gone further. In that opinion, there was a mention of same-sex marriage. I mean, I think these far-right Republicans who don't represent the American people's views would like to undo so many of the rights that people have fought hard for and won in this country. And we're going to organize. I want to tell you, this is going to be a big issue in the upcoming elections. And I really think that women and men that support women are going to be coming out to vote and to say no to this draconian suggestion.
Congressman Davis, back to the effort in the Senate to perhaps pass a law. It seems like it would have to come down to eliminating the filibuster. As it appears right now, there might be 2 Republicans that would support a pro-abortion law. But do you think the Senate will eliminate the filibuster? It sounds today like West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin would still not be in favor of that.
Well, you know, we're getting closer and closer. We've never had as much debate in modern times about the filibuster. I think there are not only elected officials, members of Congress, members of the Senate, but I think the American people are beginning and have warmed up to the idea that you do what's necessary. And if eliminating the filibuster is the only way to make it happen, then let's eliminate the filibuster and make it happen and make it real.
Congresswoman Schakowsky mentioned the political ramifications here. Is this, in some sense, a gift for Democrats politically, as they did face an uphill road in the midterms? And as you mentioned, this is an opinion that Democrats seem to share with the majority of people in the country.
I have no doubt that this is going to be a positive for Democrats and for independents to say that these rights are not going to be taken away. And let me say about the filibuster, all we need are a couple more Democratic senators in the United States Senate, and then we can limit or eliminate the filibuster. We will have enough votes. And so I think that Danny's right, that the American people are sick of Republicans stymieing all of our major efforts to help them. I'm talking about people in their lives. So I think this is going to be a real turning point, and that they're going to be sorry. If I were a Republican right now, I'd be very worried, because people do not like this policy of eliminating Roe v. Wade.
Congressman Davis, I want to shift gears a bit. One of your colleagues, Republican Adam Kinzinger, introduced a bill that would authorize military action in Ukraine if Russia uses biological or chemical weapons. Is that something you and your colleagues would support?
You know, we're hoping that Russia will exercise a bit of sanity and will not go there, will not do that, will not push us up against the wall where there's no other alternative. So we're hoping, I'm hoping, that we don't get to that point. There will be a level of sanity that will come to Mr. Putin and Russia, and we won't get to this barbaric action of using biological warfare and introducing our world to disaster.
But Congresswoman Schakowsky, if Russia does cross that unthinkable red line, or seemingly unthinkable red line, would you be prepared to support Congressman Kinzinger's bill that would authorize military action?
Look, you know, this is not going well for Vladimir Putin at all, in any way. This war has been a disaster. And there are definitely behind-the-scenes negotiations for some sort of a resolution of this. You know, he threatens all kinds of things, including, unfortunately, the use of nuclear weapons. Yes, he has his thumb on the button. But we are hoping that those absolutely those huge war crimes are not going to happen. And I agree with Danny that, you know, we would rather try and find an exit ramp with Vladimir Putin to just stop the carnage that we're seeing there. And you saw that the president was in Kyiv, and now Nancy Pelosi was there. We're doing everything we can to help. The president asked for another $33 billion. I'm sure that we'll be willing to give that. So you know, we're moving along, but I don't want to pre-guess what Putin is doing. In the meantime, I'm hoping that diplomacy is going to convince him, as well as his poor performance.
All right, a lot on Congress's plate right now, and our thanks to Congressman Danny Davis and Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky for joining us. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now, Brandis, we toss it back to you.
Paris, thank you. And still to come on Chicago tonight, it's been decades since Chicago hosted the Democratic National Convention, but today the city announces its bid for 2024. Why gubernatorial candidate and Aurora Mayor Richard Irvin now has a role in determining whether some local candidates make the ballot. Applications are open for the city's cash assistance pilot, what the launch could mean for future guaranteed income programs. And auctioning off pieces of Hollywood history from the Matrix movies. We speak with one of the filmmakers, Chicago's Lily Wachowski. But first, some more of today's top stories. Mayor Lightfoot is denying reports that she is poised to choose Bally's bid for a Chicago casino. Multiple Chicago media outlets reported earlier today that the mayor was about to choose Bally's, but the mayor told WTTW News the reports are, quote, simply not true. Bally's proposal would put a temporary casino at the Chicago Tribune printing plant at Chicago Avenue and Halsted. It eventually plans to build a $1.7 billion casino complex, along with a hotel and other entertainment on the site. Bally's is one of 3 finalists bidding for the city's casino license. Some 65 Chicago public school seniors are being honored for pursuing education degrees with the aim of returning to the city to teach. The seniors are attending a special induction ceremony at the Chicago Cultural Center this evening. They've committed to participate in Teach Chicago Tomorrow, a CPS initiative designed to increase the diversity of teachers in its workforce. CPS currently hires roughly 140 district graduates as teachers each year, but hopes to eventually triple that number to more than 500. The district says most of these new homegrown teachers will be Black or Latino. And students at Pleasantdale Middle School are celebrating their advocacy today. The school's enterprising 5th grade students were studying geology this year when they discovered Illinois did not have a state rock, and immediately went to work. The students conducted a survey of over 1,200 people to choose between sandstone, limestone, and dolostone. Dolostone, also known as dolomite, was the winner. The students then lobbied Springfield lawmakers to pass a bill with support from Congressman Sean Casten to make dolostone Illinois' official state rock. It was signed by Governor J.B. Pritzker on April 19th and celebrated at the school today. 89-year-old Willie Nelson will be the headline act at this summer's Illinois State Fair. The 10-time Grammy winner, seen here on WTTW's Soundstage in 2010, will be performing with his family on August 16th. In 1985, Nelson co-founded Farm Aid to raise awareness and money for struggling family farms. Illinois State Fair manager Rebecca Clark described Nelson as, quote, a true champion for farmers. Tickets go on sale this Saturday. And as we mentioned earlier, Chicago officially unveiled its pitch to host the 2024 Democratic National Convention in a flashy new video with the help of some familiar faces and voices. Take a look.
Suppression, oppression, we're fighting for equality. It's why we're known as the heartland of democracy.
Of course, Barack Obama there in Grant Park after winning the 2008 presidential election, and recognize the voice, of course, that is rapper and Chicago native Common. So WTTW News reporter Heather Sharon joins us now with more. So Heather, that is a very flashy video there. Does the city make a very strong case to host the DNC in 2024?
Well, it is a couple minutes of an advertisement for Chicago in the summer, complete with landmarks and sunshine and all of the famous Chicagoans. But it also makes a political case that Chicago is best equipped to make the case for the Democrats in 2024 as really an island of civil rights, Black Lives Matter, and gay rights. And that is an explicitly political argument that is somewhat unusual for these kind of videos.
What are the benefits to hosting the event in Chicago?
Well, Governor J.B. Pritzker says it will infuse $150 million into the state economy, and that will be much needed by Chicago's hospitality and tourism industries. And the hotel industry still has yet to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. So there is a lot of desire to win this convention.
And of course, the city has hosted twice before, in 1996 and 1968. Remind us what those were like.
Well, of course, the 1968 convention is best remembered for the police riot that erupted in downtown Chicago. And the 1996 convention was explicitly marketed by former Mayor Richard M. Daley as a way to exercise those goats. The 96 convention also supercharged the redevelopment of the West Loop, which is now, of course, home to fancy restaurants and trendy condos. And Mayor Lori Lightfoot is certainly hoping a 2024 convention could bring that sort of redevelopment to parts of the city that are still struggling.
So a lot at stake for the city and the state. Heather Sharon, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Brandis.
And you can read Heather's full story on our website. That's WTTW.com/news. And now, Paris, back to you.
Thanks, Brandis. Aurora Mayor and Republican gubernatorial hopeful Richard Irvin backed a successful effort to shut down a local election commission. That's a move that gives him more power in deciding whether certain candidates can stay on city ballots. Chicago Tonight's Nick Blumberg has been looking into this story and joins us now. Nick, what was the Aurora Election Commission and why did opponents like Richard Irvin want it shut down?
Well, Paris, the Aurora Election Commission had a similar function to the Chicago Board of Elections, registering voters, ruling on challenges to candidates nominating petitions, administering elections. Supporters said that since the city of Aurora sits in multiple counties, it was efficient to have a centralized body to handle elections. But opponents said that it was superfluous because the respective counties could handle those elections, and it was a financial drain. Opponents had tried multiple times to get the commission shut down. And in 2018, they got a referendum on the ballot to do just that, and that referendum eventually passed by more than 1,400 votes. Now, in a statement about why he thought the commission should be eliminated, Irvin's gubernatorial campaign spokesperson Eleni Demirtzis told us Mayor Irvin is proud of his strong record in cutting wasteful spending and eliminating meaningless units of government like the Aurora Election Commission. As governor, he will finally bring responsible leadership to this state by fighting to reduce wasteful spending, enact permanent tax cuts, and put more money in the pocketbooks of Illinois families.
And as we mentioned, Nick, now Irvin himself has a role in overseeing the ballot. How did that come about?
Well, with the commission gone, state law outlines the local officials who oversee ballot challenges for municipal candidates. In the case of Aurora, it's Irvin, the city clerk he appoints, and the senior member of the Aurora City Council. Now, last year, Irvin and other members of the board ruled that Ron Werman, an aldermanic candidate, could remain on the ballot amid challenges that he hadn't lived in Aurora long enough and that there were irregularities with his petitions. Despite conflict of interest claims, because Irvin and Werman are friends, an attorney advising the board said that Irvin reportedly did not need to recuse himself. Irvin later transferred money from his campaign fund to Werman, who was eventually elected. Now, this system where elected and politically appointed officials determine ballot eligibility, it's a function of state election law, and it's used in other cities and towns around the state. But advocates for election law reform say it's rife with the potential for conflicts of interest and a disservice to voters.
The people who are sitting on these electoral boards and who are deciding who gets to stay on the ballot when these petition challenges come to them, they have a direct stake in who wins these elections and therefore who gets to be on the ballot. It's an inherent conflict of interest. They're going to be biased towards their friends and their allies who may well be incumbents, and they're going to be less disposed to judge favorably challengers or people that they don't think will vote for them if they manage to get elected into office.
And Nick, there was a campaign that took place to eliminate this election commission, and as you found, some similar campaign donors that we've seen in some of our previous investigations into Irvin.
That's right, Paris. Irvin's own mayoral campaign fund contributed $2,500 toward that effort to shut the commission down. And other financial backers include many of the people and businesses you and I have been reporting on in recent weeks that have gotten lucrative city deals and heavily backed Irvin and other campaign funds tied to him. We've got all the details about that web of campaign money on our website, as well as much more about other charges of conflict of interest and of improper use of city funds as part of the effort to shut down that election commission.
All right, Nick Blumberg, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And up next, a look at the potential impact of the city's cash assistance pilot program in a conversation that first aired on Chicago Tonight Black Voices. So please stay with us.
Thousands of Puerto Ricans are taking to the streets to protest massive blackouts.
Over the years, Mexican culture, from food to music, has become woven into the city's tapestry.
Medical professionals share the latest recommendations on COVID-19 booster shots.
DACA recipients have been facing longer delays than normal in their status renewal.
Little Village is one of my favorite neighborhoods. This neighborhood comes together to celebrate such an important day in our culture.
Applications for Chicago's cash assistance pilot program are now open. Eligible applicants will be entered into a lottery to determine who gets $500 a month for 1 year. Ultimately, 5,000 households will receive checks in one of the largest tests of guaranteed income across the country. Joining us now are Harish Patel, Director of Economic Security for Illinois, Nicole Robinson, CEO of YWCA Metropolitan Chicago, which is leading outreach efforts for the pilot, and Richard Wallace, founder and executive director of Equity and Transformation, also on the city's advisory group. Thanks to the three of you for joining us. Welcome back. Harish Patel, more than 100,000 applications in process so far. Are you surprised by that amount?
I'm not surprised because we know that need is very high. I'm heartened to find out that the application is simple enough that a lot of people have applied and were able to finish the application, that the city invested in outreach. That is all great. It is also, at the same time, disheartening to know that so many of our neighbors need cash support right now, both because of the pandemic and also for the historically, for years, we have sort of neglected some of our neighbors.
Nicole, the YWCA, you all have been leading outreach efforts in collaboration with, dozens of other community-based organizations. What have you all been doing to get the word out?
We've been doing everything, Brandis. We've put together sets of marketing materials to spread the word in community. Hundreds of community partners are standing shoulder to shoulder with the YWCA to get the word out. So flyers are being handed out into the community. Organizations are sending email blasts. We are having virtual assistance where people residents can hear and learn about the program, learn how to complete the application. We are having in-person events where people can learn about what their options are. And again, it's for everyone. So caregivers, parents, undocumented. There is assistance in 6 different languages. So we're meeting people where they are so that for anyone who wants to apply, there's a solution to help them. We are at libraries. The Department of Family and Supportive Services has been great. So they've opened all their community service centers, their senior centers. These are all places where residents can walk in and someone can give them some counsel and advice on how to apply. The application takes about 15 to 20 minutes, so it's doable. They can start it. If they don't finish, they can come back to it, and there's someone to help. So Haresh is spot on. We're making it easy, and I think outreach is working with 100,000 people already in the queue.
Yeah, and to that last point that you made, that if you don't finish the application, you can come back. So at this point, we know that 100,000 applications have been started, not necessarily completed and submitted. The nonprofit Give Directly was responsible for designing the application and administering that process. We spoke with Sarah Moran from Give Directly about that process.
one of the things that was really challenging was how do you create a scalable application that's also really accessible, and especially for populations that are not super tech literate, that may be housing unstable or homeless, that may not have consistent access to phones or to computers. So what we've actually built is an application that can be done by an individual by themselves. It's really simple. It takes only about 20 minutes to fill out, but it can also be implemented in an assisted model.
Richard, some of your organization's members were involved in testing this initial application. What's the feedback been?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we knew initially is that, accessibility and eligibility were often barriers for our folks. And so we're able to get, Gregory Mann, one of our lead organizers, was able to get a few of our members together to test out the application. And they said that it was accessible and they said that they were eligible. And so for me, that was the key for me to be like, okay, we're going to continue to promote this and post it up on our Instagrams, our socials, send out newsletters to try to get as many of our folks who were also folks who didn't meet the criteria for our Chicago Future Fund to apply for this guaranteed income pilot.
And Richard, why is it so important to ensure that the application is, accessible and easy to understand?
Yeah, I think we learned a lot through the beginning of the pandemic. I remember when, thousands of dollars worth of checks were left during the CARES Act because people just didn't have access to it. I think we learned a lot during the pandemic and people getting access to testing or access to vaccinations because there was inequities in the city that surfaced during the pandemic that proved to us that it was extremely important to ensure that our folks had ease of access to the things they need in order to syncrine. And so I think most of those learnings that came over the path of the last 2 years were all applied, I think, in synchronous fashion for this project.
Harish, what are some of the outcomes that the city might be looking at to determine whether or not this pilot can be extended or made permanent?
Yeah, I think what we know is that cities already heard from 100,000 people, right? These are neighbors, these are people who pay taxes, these are people who vote. So I know that the city already got a pretty strong response that for 5,000 slots, they have 100,000 people who applied. That's 95,000 folks who are going to get an alternative to being involved, getting direct cash. So that is one message. And second is, I think that they're going to find, they have evaluation partners with the University of Chicago Inclusive Economy Lab that is doing the study, and that study is going to show that when you make things simple and easy and empower people and let them decide what to do with this money, how they want to help their family, that actually is the most empowering and the simplest way to help our neighbors. And when that happens, I think we're going to see changes at all the different departments who provide services at the city. And we're also going to see some sort of permanence of these sort of cash pilots. There's over almost 100 pilots like this in the nation. So I think Chicago, being one of the biggest, is going to have such a central part to sort of share the results widely.
And Nicole, what kind of impact can, $500 a month have on the families who do get into this lottery?
A huge impact, Brandis. When I think about it, just decisions about car repairs, health insurance co-pays, school fees, extra food. There's so many things that a family needs that even with other programs that exist today, they don't cover the full cost. They don't cover the unexpected, unplanned for expense that a family might have. The other thing I'd say around the impact is a parallel program. During the pandemic, the child tax credit was expanded. And there was actually a report that was released earlier this month by the Brookings Institute, where 70% of families that received $300 a month on this program, they did just that. They spent it on things to support that family, to extend the well-being of the family, to reduce the stress. The whole city, our whole country is hanging on a string as a result of this pandemic. And the idea of not worrying every day how to make rent, how to pay utilities, how to do all those things, that's going to give families relief. And the data from other programs like the child tax credit already shows that families, we can trust them. They know what to do. They'll make the right decisions about their family.
Right. A big difference for the
will
families.
be better off and more secure.
Right. For the families that receive it. Richard, we've got about 30 seconds left. Do you think America is, are we changing the way that we feel about programs like this, about guaranteed income programs, since, as Harish says, there are about 100 of them in process across the country?
Yeah, I believe that it's a major shift. And shout out to the folks from like the National Welfare Rights Organizations in the 60s that were fighting for this. And to see it happen, 60, 70 years later, I'm not great at math, but 60 years later, it is a huge leap for our city, I think for our democracy as well. And I think that through these pilots, you're going to generate a base of folks that can turn out and begin to advocate at the voting booth during Election Day around how they want to see their local governments, their states show up in their lives.
All right. Thanks to the three of you for joining us, Harish Patel, Nicole Robinson, and Richard Wallace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back with more Chicago Tonight right after this.
Hollywood history hits the auction block in Chicago this month. The 4 Matrix films set new standards for visionary movie making, and now those artifacts from those and other films are up for bid. The filmmakers, the Wachowskis, grew up in the Beverly neighborhood and still call Chicago home. Arts producer Mark Vitale spoke with artist and filmmaker Lily Wachowski about an auction with a cause.
Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
The truth is, the famous red and blue pills aren't up for auction, but there are props and models from all 4 Matrix movies. Plus, items from other films by the Wachowskis, including V for Vendetta and Cloud Atlas, the 2012 film with Tom Hanks and Halle Berry. And why not bid on Channing Tatum's boots from Jupiter Ascending? There's also an abundance of stuff the Wachowskis have accumulated in nearly 30 years of filmmaking.
It's even just personal stuff, stuff that we've collected, gifts to us from fans and, celebrity types. So yeah, we're just clearing house, the Wachowskis are.
They've held on to a few items.
Yeah, I still have a few things that are still pretty cool. I have, one of the red chairs from the Matrix movie. So Lana has one of those. I have one of those.
Free your mind.
Lana is Lily's sister. Once known as the Wachowski brothers, they've each come out as a transgender woman. Their clearinghouse auction of movie memorabilia, including futuristic weapons and more traditional ones, will benefit the Protect and Defend Trans Youth Fund, recently launched by pop star Ariana Grande.
It's a fund that benefits multiple organizations, particularly in states that are targeting trans people in their legislature. We shouldn't have to do this. We shouldn't have to have fundraisers to protect trans people. We're going to stand up for each other. It's just a matter if, our allies and if cis people are going to stand up for us too.
The Wachowskis are working with a Chicago auction house that specializes in magic. This time they're dealing with movie magic, including maquettes, scale models used by the special effects crew.
Behind you, you've got one of the Sentinels from the Matrix. And again, these are to show the people making the film what we want to see on screen. So these are the things that are essential to, creating that movie magic. This is a lightning rifle from the Matrix. It's used in one of the key scenes, and this is what they call the hero prop. So this is the one you see up close in the film. And is wielded by one of the main characters in the film.
And though they've made movies all over the world, the Wachowskis remain dedicated to their hometown.
I've always called Chicago home. I've always had a residence here. There was something that was really grounding and insulating about all that space between LA and Chicago. And I think it allowed me and my sister to, I don't know, make better art.
Now, pieces of their creativity will be available for fans to bid on.
I love the idea that me and Lana are able to push these atoms out into the world for someone else to cherish, because they're really not doing much good to us except for, you know, feeding our ego, which is, we can do without.
For Chicago Tonight, this is Mark Vitale.
The auction is called Enter the Matrix, the Wachowski Collection. It's scheduled for 10 a.m. next Thursday, May 12th at Potter & Potter Auctions in Chicago. You can find out more on our website. And we're back to wrap things up right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
And that's our show for this Tuesday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing. And you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news.
And you can also get the show via podcast and the PBS video app. And please join us tomorrow night live at 7. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a great evening.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury law firm pleased to give back to the community through numerous charitable initiatives.
This is the one mystery I want to know.
On Finding Your Roots, Lisa Lane.
I spent 17 years of being ashamed of being Chinese American.
Christiane Amanpour.